sense that with every chapter we're going to do, I'm going to say the same thing, which is this is one of my favorite chapters in the book. I think if we open a session like this and I don't say this, then it's an indication that I should probably rewrite the chapter. So let's see. Last week we were speaking about awareness, its self-iterative nature, the way that awareness is essentially what it is that we know. It's not just the how we know, it is the essence of what knowing is. And this chapter focuses on the way that awareness, beyond just the nature of knowing, is also the way and was created for conflict resolution. In terms of the way that the more the system that we are becomes complex, the more that we have more moving parts, more senses, more brain parts, more aspects of what it is for us to be an organism that need to come together and behave and arrive at some conclusion moment to moment about how to make a decision, how to act, how to be in the world. How this creates the necessity for a space where all this information is integrated, and how when we have a sufficient level of complexity, the start becoming this hierarchy of spaces of awareness, each integrating more and more of the information coming from the lower spaces of awareness. By the way, right now I'm just gonna give this overview, but if something is particularly unclear, I'm also, tracking your faces. If something is particularly clear, do stop me and ask me. So in this chapter, the essence of what I'm trying to convey, and this relates also to the notion of basis of operation that we were speaking to, is that there's a way not just to become smarter, so to speak, by learning new facts about the world, by gathering new skills, by honing our senses, but actually to create better Lego pieces of mind, creating both fundamental agreements about how it is that the different parts coming into a space of awareness collect and connect together to do the decision-making process, but also what is the fundamental unit of being? What is the fundamental unit of perception? And something that's not fully mentioned in this chapter, only going to later, but I want to mention as a side note, is that ultimately what we recognize, or at least ultimately as far as the tradition, wisdom traditions on this planet know and conceive of, ultimately we get to this point where the essential unit of phenomena, or the component bit of awareness, is what people would sometimes call God or Buddha nature. And because we lose a degree of distinction that doesn't make for any difference or any sort of difference that allows us to be a happy and smooth reflection of the universe, we lose a lot of the friction. We lose a lot of the energy that needs to come in to represent what is essentially useless. So I'll state it differently. On this path of finding finer units of recognition and creating bases of operation that rely on them, we can put less energy in representing and creating a model of our world and of ourselves in it, and get to a place where, in some sense, the way that we relate to everything is more symmetrical. In some sense, those fewer options around how we relate to basic phenomena. It all comes into a singular category of, oh, this is all Buddha nature. This is all same stuff. Now, funnily enough, because this is all the same stuff at a very fundamental level, then the stuff that we build on top, the layers of representation, the complexity of our behaviors can actually only increase. And this is sort of saying a lot, and I'm speaking in a very abstract way. I did want to plant the seed here. the path or the goal that we're going towards is in some way a complete reorganization of our ontology, what the basic units of perception is and how we make meaning about it, towards having fewer meanings and fewer ontologies until everything is just the same stuff that even calling God or Buddha nature is saying too much for.
Doug, what do you mean by Buddha nature? I mean, in that regards of seeing the reality.
So this is very hard to describe, right? It's a direct experience. And we do talk specifically about Buddha nature in the next chapter, going to a deeper exploration of it. But the essence of it is Buddha is awake or wakefulness in Pali, in the old Hindu language. And so Buddha nature is like awake nature. In some sense, or a way to describe it would be you're coming face to face with the awake nature of all of existence, or of every particle of being, of everything that exists even before a human being or any animal or sentient being, or even any inanimate object. That's not to say that inanimate objects as we know them have sentience, but we come face to face with a recognition, a direct recognition, not something that requires thinking about, that everything is composed of the same stuff. It's just
So is this
natural
something, is this
relationship.
something, is this something, I'm trying to bring it down to kind of practicality, if you may
Yes.
say so, to reality. Yes, that we don't see. What does that mean? Yeah, we can understand that in maybe in abstract way of maybe whole one is unity or seeing what it is. I don't know, but it's so hard to articulate that. So I'm trying to grasp what does that mean?
Yep. It is very, very hard. An analogy that we can use, only speak to it very little in this chapter, but because we can have a conversation about this, I'm allowing myself to speak to it a little more. Imagine that as part of the development of the brain, the basic model, which is the reflection that lives inside of our brain of what everything else is and what we are inside of this everything, has degrees of sophistication. So of course, a child, right, has the on a content level, it's easy to understand because a child has a very grotesque understanding of what happens around it, and it's in some sense also existing in this state of a dream, right? Up until the age of 6 or 7, um, a child's brain is characterized by deep theta waves, right, which are more generally in an adult indicative of dream states. They're very programmable. They're very permeable. Their model of existence is very wishy-washy, right? And they can have all sorts of fun beliefs, right, about Santa and monsters and all sorts of magical realms and so on. And that relies on in the same way their senses and the way that they make sense about their senses, the information coming in, not having become developed enough to really see, oh, this is solid. There's no place in this reality where Santa can come in, right? They have so many options and they're swimming in them and they don't have any so much certainty, right? The way they make decisions then is unconstrained because of the vast range of possibility that exists in their mind, which is at that point a reflection that's a little crazy, right? So as we grow up, it's not just about the content that changes. It's not just about the sort of let's say constraints of what is even possible coming from our disappointments with the world and the maturation of the brain towards being less permeable and less living in a dream. But the claim is that in some sense, what we call sentient beings or beings that have not woken up, is that there's still an aspect of us living in a dream with regards to the word. The ability of our model to accurately reflect reality is not fully developed. And so we make all sorts of crazy assumptions and we run with them. And those are the ones that cause and perpetuate suffering, which is the essence of this chapter. And there's also a friction that exists between the more fundamental reality and our model solely before we even represented anything, solely due to the less developed aspect of this essential act of reflection of the world around us. So we upgrade the bare bones, the metal, the fundamental assumptions of how to even reflect and what it is that we see. Yeah, Jen.
I was wondering when you said it's even before there's sentient beings, I guess I still kind of think of awareness as like something my brain creates, but are you kind of saying it's just there, and it like the brain creating it is like just a scientific tidbit that we came up with?
So I'm not saying either. Um, and I don't know that I want to go into this right now. If we have time for like a slightly more metaphysical discussion, um, let's do it later. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's finish the just like at least a summary of the thrust of this chapter. Okay, so in some sense, because of this friction that exists even a priori before you represent everything, every act of representation and then layers of representation only have this friction accumulate with every layer. And the claim that I'm making in this chapter is because of the nature of our need to make decisions in environments where we have incomplete information, right? We can never fully get all the information. Even if we're satisfied in those rare moments where we're like, okay, I have all the information I need to make a decision. Of course, there's always an infinite amount of more information I could take into consideration. And we have a sense of, okay, it's like I've taken enough. This is what I need. This is what I feel comfortable with the assumptions of my brain, assumptions of my model to make a decision. But for the most part, we don't have that. And those decisions, not only do they live in an atmosphere of incomplete information, but also they represent a result of some conflict of the different subminds of the different entities, the different aspects of ourselves, each sort of pulling a different way, and they kind of meet in the middle. The thing is, once we have met in the middle for a particular decision, and due to reasons that I'm going to way deep into later in the book, some of those decisions become so entrenched that we forget that we made them. This is where the analogy of the genes comes in. It's like we have decided, or someone, of course, has decided for us, right? This of course, this non-duality here. How did this come to be? This decision for putting on the genes or to otherwise constrain a range of what's even possible to see, to perceive, to represent in the world. We forget that we've done it. And then any future decision coming on the foundation of that, then if I've mounted something here, the next one might be deeper in and deeper in. And we create what at the time was it I keep forgetting if it's Aldous Huxley or Terence McKenna, one of those guys who termed reality tunnel. We don't actually see reality anymore, but only a very often finely tuned tunnel, not just crafted by us, but also by the powers that be, who are profiting or have an incentive to keep us only looking at and through a particular set of pink or other types of glasses. And this is where psychedelics come in, like really opening up the aperture, allowing for a while more and more information to come in. This is, of course, where meditation comes in, because from inside a reality tunnel, there's no move from the tunnel to get out of the tunnel. Everywhere we look is the tunnel. So the only move is to sit and relax, come into stillness, allow the basic assumptions of the tunnel to be seen from a wider perspective that's cultivatable in meditation. We see more and more of the choices that we've made, leading to a wider and wider space of awareness. And then what that allows is slowly to see more and more of the finer bits of reality, so to speak. and also to craft the types of agreements between the participants of mind that allows enough brain juice, enough mental capacity to grasp those deeper insights, to grasp and understand and then operationalize the deeper insights about how to reflect reality. Eventually, we get to this point where our reflection is so it's high fidelity enough, so to speak, that we get to this point that we started talking about last week, where it feels like we don't even need to reflect so much of reality, to model so much of reality. We become something that's much more in a continuous flow with it and offload a lot of the work that we did to model just to the bigger mind. Yes.
I'm going back to some of the notes that you mentioned, but you mentioned kind of which of these contribute to more suffering, and you mentioned about, or is this decision mechanism itself? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that, and I wonder, I don't know if it's then necessarily the decision-making process itself, which could be as well, but to begin with, we ourselves we comprise of multiple subsystems
Mm-hmm.
that each system in itself has a different kind of purpose and goals, as if we have almost within us different kind of like cameras to begin with as the operation.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can we, so within us, we have different realities. Yes, because we see that from a different angle.
Right.
In order for us to, so that's the basic, so now what we do in our mind, as we say, we have different kind of cascades or integration. We try to take the different kind of like cameras and, try to create another layer of synergy maybe between all of them. So to begin with, I'm saying we are so disconnected from the reality
Mm-hmm.
as to begin with. And then obviously, I mean, to begin with, we are distant from reality. Later on, we try to, the mere fact of the operation of the self or whatever it is, we try to comprise and combine that, which create layers of, you call it alignment or synergy,
Mm-hmm.
which is further away. And you talk about Buddha or whatever it is, we talk about unity and the separation is illusion. So in some ways, we try to create unity out of the separation, which we see at the beginning. It's so convoluted, if I may say so.
Yeah.
So we try to understand, even for us, I mean, for me, to try to understand the cameras, yes, the way of perspective, and maybe
Uh-huh.
to simplify that. It's like almost going out of these cameras. How do we do that? It's so puzzling.
So the first move is indeed to combine all the cameras into one more harmonious camera. And that's the essence of mind collectedness practice or concentration practice, or I like calling it consensus, creating consensus between the different mind parts, right? Because in the same way that a decision pulls you every which way, you could say that this moment of awareness, just like any other moment, is the best resolution to the conflict of representing reality. Each and every camera is trying to, no, look at this, look at this, look at this. No, try from this way, this frame of view, this perspective. And what we get in awareness is, in some sense, a winner take all process, but also in a way an average of all of them together, something they can sort of live with. And the tension that we feel, the thing that we sometimes call suffering, right? This agitation and the tension that we feel in the body, all the contractions, is the representation and is directly proportional to the dissatisfaction of each of the participants of mind. And what I'm saying is, it's both coming back to the distinction between the model and the modeling. suffering is both a result of each and every way that our different models are in conflict with one another, or they're unsatisfied with the global result that was then applied top down, and the fundamental modeling, or the basic wisdom that each of them possesses about how to model reality and how to come together in modeling reality. Which is again why we first collect all of them on something that they all find agreeable and pleasing, right? One of the qualities of the Brahma Viharas, or even the breath in a very neutral way, which creates a sense of peace and settledness and safety in the body. And once we have that, once the mind is collected enough, we can start working on upgrading the basic assumptions. In a sense, this is the whole path. And the only thing that's in the way, once we start doing this upgrading, is that when we untunnel, right, when we loosen the assumptions, all sorts of information that before that was suppressed or pushed away by the act of tunneling starts flooding us, and a lot of it is very uncomfortable. Some of this stuff are all of the lies that we've been telling ourselves. I'm like this, and what I did to that person is okay, and it's fine that I'm taking a little more money for myself. It's very, very uncomfortable. And anything else that is even just below any level of meaning or conception, any type of pain that we're carrying that we've never fully felt and integrated, because we did not have the capacity. Yeah.
So once we create this kind of like try to create kind of synergy, or you call it harmony between all these aspects, but are we trying to get into the common denominator, or are we trying to create some kind of like to reduce suffering, to reduce for example, I would think about, we talk about love, yes, we talk about harmony, I don't know, maybe ethics. Is this kind of all these equations or elements is there certain ways that are driving us toward peacefulness, harmony, bliss, call it whatever it is, that certain kind of value system, which is the alignment toward certain things, because we need to hold something, yes? We need to kind of guidelines. What is these elements that are driving toward that particular thing? I mean, and I wonder if there's one thing that is better than the other ones. You know, when we're kids, we don't want to feel pain. Yes, so we act very emotionally. We feel that we are feeling great because we have the tantrum. Yes, but this is a short term that maybe later on going to create a greater level of suffering. So what are the elements that do we need to articulate them so we are going to ultimately maybe reduce suffering? We are going to create a model, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not sure there's a greater question here than this.
no, the question is, you talked about the common denominator or harmony. Based on what? What are the parameters to create that?
The basic structure of this universe.
Which means?
In the same way that we have the laws of physics, laws of thermodynamics, the patterns that we see everywhere in nature, the way that rivers are formed, and the way that that pattern looks like our vascular system and the stars in the sky, in a sense. There are organizing principles that our brain was created to represent, those fundamental assumptions about how nature is, and we learn to let go. Actually, I can I can go into maybe a 2 minute long deep dive into some of the mathematics of this. I don't know if there's a desire for this. You guys tell me if that's interesting. As of how the brain represents things. Okay, seems there's enough interest. Let's see how to make it not too crazy. And this is something that I've not written well enough yet in the book. There will be a chapter on this in the information theory part. So we can say that the brain is a statistical map of reality, or a multi-layered statistical map of reality. We don't exactly know things. We know what is the chance that a particular input represents a pattern that we've already learned, that we're already familiar with. And of course, this corresponds to what we spoke about last time about the nature of knowing. We know things in terms of everything else. And those terms are the statistics of it. What is the chance that what I'm saying is this pattern that I've made of it before? So if I hear a sort of like a ripper in the background, it's like 80% cat, 20% dog, right? If I hear more of like, it's like 80% dog, 20% cat, right? And of course, there's a threshold. If the threshold is high enough, it's like a woof, right? That's like 99% dog. So we don't even think cat. And we even blind ourselves to the process that said 99% dog, 1% cat. Now, the funny thing is, the way we represent, again, is not, oh, it lights up my dog neuron or neuronal network. It's we have the dog network, so to speak, and we also have what is the distance from the actual experience, right? Like the uncertainty about it being a dog. And also, what is the distance between the dog that I'm seeing here now? Let's pretend I'm actually seeing a dog. What is the distance between what I'm seeing now and the classic dog that I have in mind? So let's say I'm seeing a dog with 3 legs. It's not that I'm building from scratch a whole model of a 3-legged being that has the properties of a dog, has this type of fur and has this type of color, right? This is what's called, it relates to the notion of principal component analysis that I mentioned in this chapter, that every aspect of us is doing and then contributing to the process of decision making, right? To save energy on representing. We want to find like the quintessential aspects of what it is that we represent, right? So if I wanted to tell you, I'm thinking of an animal, right? And I wanted you to know dog, I would do woof, right? And I would not describe its particular nuances of olfactory system, right? No, woof. Men's best friend, right? What's the simplest way to describe? And so the brain doesn't represent what we see, or like the way that the brain lights up is there's the pattern that we think that we see, and then what is the distance, informational distance, that can be measured very accurately in information theoretical equations between the prototypical dog, or the model of dog that I have in mind, and what it is that I'm seeing. So is this clear? Like so far? Yeah. Okay, let's see. So where do we want to take this? Okay, help me out. What did we talk about immediately before I went into this? There's an important loop here to close. I don't want to lose the juice that we've cultivated by going into this exploration. Okay, let's continue talking, and then maybe it comes back to us as we go. Sorry, I know this is probably very unsatisfying. Okay, Jen, take us forward.
For the, was it the opening the tunnel so that things are like more in awareness, so that they can like kind of, I don't know, accept it or something, or get on the same page. I was curious about the like the difference between kind of that process and something like parts work or IFS, or like kind of digging down into each individual like emotion or tension and what it's trying to say.
Mm-hmm. So those generally work on the level of content, the relationship between the different parts. And what we're trying to do here is focus less on the existing and go deeper into refining the model. And the claim that I'm making in this chapter, and we go deeper into it in the solving the infinite puzzle chapter that comes up next, is that from the higher bases of operation that depend on a finer understanding and agreement between the different parts, some of those conflicts just fall off immediately. Because there's a more fundamental agreement on what reality is, at least some of the lower hanging fruits just fall off the tree. And there's, oh wait, what did we ever disagree about? And that's not to say that we get everything for free, and there's still a lot of benefit from those higher bases to get into this type of work, IFS work or therapy in general, because some things are really so deeply entrenched, particularly those that relate to traumas, that can really use some other tools beyond just meditating. And I'll even say many people, uh, it's this ongoing debate in the pragmatic and modern Dharma community. If because the Westerners that we are have been exposed to some more trauma, and generally the way we live our life is a little more slanted for the natural way for humans, we require much more therapy than the meditators who've come before us in the East, who really can be served almost completely just by meditation, or maybe just by meditation.
See, okay, so it's getting at kind of the, okay, that makes sense. Kind of like if we see reality and the parts agree, we don't really have to go into the things built on top, unless they're really stuck.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And if someone, say, like, has seen the reality, but the parts haven't like fully gotten on the same page around it, do they need to see that same reality again and again, or can they like kind of refer back to it without having to see it again?
so this is a lot of the thesis that my teacher Chuladasa had that I think influenced a lot of how people conceive of the path, where in standard Buddhism there's the notion of an insight or liberating insight, an insight into the nature of reality, or like the marks of existence. And then what he made a beautiful case for is the more the mind is collected at the time where you have the insight, the more of those parts are online and reverberating with one another, the more they will all take in the insight together. And not only will it take the insight together and update their model, they'll also see that everyone else is taking the insight and updating the model. And so they can trust that all the other participants are now shifting the way that they relate to one another. Because as we explore later in the book, a lot of the ways that we relate to one another can be described as hostile in nature or malevolent. And so it's sort of like a reverse arms race, or like a deproliferation treaty. Like we lower our arms, but as we do it, we're still sort of like, look, is that guy doing it? Is that bar doing it? Right? Like and then we just drop them all together.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful.
So I see, I see some of you are going into some inquiry around this. So maybe this is a good opportunity just to get this a little more, more of the felt sense of it. So I'll ask you, without going into breakout rooms or anything, just take a minute to consider what jeans you're wearing to this call today. What are the assumptions that you've come into this call with, or that you woke up this morning and started your life with? Sometimes the ones that are the edge of our assumptions, even without psychedelics or meditation, just asking, what are the constrictive assumptions of my current experience? Sometimes that's enough. And as you do it, I want you to have a little smile on your faces. Like those things. You know, we've described them as a little malevolent, but ultimately, certainly from their perspective, they're doing the highest service that they have to offer, and they also want to be seen in that. So try to make it less of a hunt and more of a oh, interesting. Come at it with a sense of wonder. What are the jeans that I'm wearing? What made me put them on? So for me, coming into this contemplation, into this inquiry, what comes up are all sorts of subtle ideas about how I want to show up with you, coming from the sense of course, my imagination about what it is that you might be expecting, what would be of service to you, how you might best enjoy our time together. And in this exploration, it's not that I'm so much taking the genes off, because those are the right genes for the call, but being with them, like allowing the genes to come into awareness, and of course with an attitude of respect and a smile, even reverence, it helps them be infused by the grander wisdom that the system has to offer. In the sense, bringing anything to awareness, whether it's an entrenched assumption, even the type that we might call craving, is a service. Anyone else care to share something?
Yes, I've noticed the strong desire to be perceived as smart and insightful inside the group. And then I laughed when I realized, because even this realization and even me talking about this feels like an expression of this. But I also thought about how this might actually block a better understanding, because it might block an expression of curiosity and asking dumb questions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, Jen.
I have this like loop that I get stuck in of like believing that I have to get somewhere different to be happy, and have to like get some kind of understanding, or something has to shift so that I don't get caught in like obscurations. And then yeah, they kind of just they lose.
What?
Hi. I think today I woke up with the idea that today will be a shit day. Uh, doing a lot of unfun things at work. And I think I continue with that trend to this meeting as well. And I notice it, like this energy. Uh, Definitely the wrong genes, and dissipate quite quickly.
A beautiful thing about this type of inquiry is that once we have the genes we're wearing in awareness, we can also then, in collaboration with them, in a sense, ask ourselves how we want to be. This is a whole exploration that I don't want to get into now, but I just want you to know that it's available. Once I know that I have a set of assumptions about, oh, this day is going to suck, or, oh, I have to show up this way and be seen this way, I can also then ask myself the follow-up question, how do I want to relate to this moment? How do I want to relate to myself? How do I want to show up? What do I want to get from this interaction? And even if the genes are not relenting all the way, at least there's a new voice that's heard. There's an immediate change in experience. Yeah, Jonathan.
Yeah, I noticed the jeans woke up wearing today are ones where I feel a need to, like, the more skillfully that I can engage with my loved ones who are struggling with things, the more effectively they may be able to work with whatever they're struggling with. And then in this inquiry, I noticed that desire comes with a lot of constriction and makes it difficult to access the greater love I want to feel for them. And so they're seemingly in the same direction. Like, the more effectively I can help the people I care about, the more expansiveness they'll be able to experience in their lives, the more easily they'll be able to love them. And the tension that has with just simply accessing that love now.
So how would you want to be?
Want to engage with them from a place of like more relaxed openness rather than when they're noticing when they're struggling or reactive or in pain, notice the constriction that arises within me and notice how that makes it harder to access feelings of love and care, even when I'm trying to act out of love and care. So it seems like this contradiction.
What's the contradiction?
Well, I want to love them more effectively, which seems to be at odds with just simply loving them.
Okay, I don't want to go too deep into this now. If you care to stay later, happy to talk to you about this.
I have to leave at 11 for work, but thank you.
Time. All right. Any more questions or comments? Any other things we want to explore this chapter? Yeah.
You said that the genes we find ourselves in a given situation are the right genes, the right ones. And I'm not sure in what way do you mean that they are the right genes for the situation. They are there, but what's the rightness of them?
The best answer and only answer I can give is it's only based on what's right in your mind, from your perspective. And it's like answering the question, what are the genes that I want to wear?
So if I want to be in a different ones, then they are not right.
Well, I generally don't like to use the word right and wrong in this regard. It's more like, how do I want to be? Am I finding myself in genes that are not right for the type of dance that I want to have in this moment? Actually, later in the break room, I have an idea for an exercise I want us to do in this regard. But I'll save that for later before we jump in. But I hope this answers your question, right? Because it's very important, or even in some sense a quintessential change or difference between the more grotesque model of existence and the more refined one. Where in the grotesque one or the less developed one, we keep trying to find ultimate answers or right answers. And they generally relate to all sorts of programming that we received in our youth or some external authority that we are trying to match, right? I was told that I have to be this way and wear this sort of thing, and this is the range of emotions that I'm allowed, right? And in the path, we become more and more our own authority. And our own authority means that even for us, there's nothing that is right or ultimately right. It's more like, what is the dance that I want to express in the world in any given moment? And am I stuck in genes that are not gonna let me, kick my legs around?
I think I do understand, and this is exactly the place my question came from, because at least I heard you saying that the genes that are there, they are the right ones, and now okay.
So does my answer make sense?
Now it does more than what I heard you saying before.
If I say the right genes or the right anything, I always mean what's right for you. What's right for you or what's right for the collection of people who are coming into a decision. Never an ultimate rightness. Yeah, Jen?
So we wanna see the genes, not necessarily take them off. But does the mind, like, if it keeps seeing the genes, does it just like stop putting on genes, or is that like, well, always, I feel like my mind like okay, let's stop doing things. It's like, well, that's still so it's like yeah. Does it ever actually take them decide, oh, I actually don't need any genes?
So to be in the world, you always need some pants. In meditation, we can get to a place where we take everything off, which is the essence of emptiness practice, and going towards the extreme, which is a cessation experience, cessation of cognition and feeling. The reason that cognition and feeling stop is that essentially we take on not just pants, we take off all of our glasses, we take off all perspectives. We stop making sense of experience. I talk about this with Delson in the second episode of Tales from Nibbana, about the various aspects of these extreme states. There are ones where awareness is just very minimal. It's still like just a sense of I kind of know something is happening, but nothing is happening. And then there's a state where the senses might still be on, but nothing is interpreting them. There's no cognition. And then there's a state of a complete blink off, no experience at all, just like under complete anesthesia. The mind is so untroubled, there's just no conflict to be had. So the top layer of the space of a space of awareness, right, which is what we have as our subjective experience, it just stops for a microsecond, or if you're Delson, then for 6 days. Yeah.
And those
the benefit of this is once the more I go into an undifferentiated state, right, the more I take off all assumptions, the more freedom I have when they start reconstructing and deciding exactly what is right for the moment.
Okay.
Right for me, right for the moment, right for the situation. And I want to again remind us that we're going towards a place where we become more and more of an accurate, or maybe a better word is a resonant, harmonious reflection of the universe around us. And before we get to this extreme of taking them all off and then spinning back up, which is more the first turning of the wheel type of practice, in the Mahamudra path, based on this third turning of the wheel, the one that I appreciate and enjoy much more, we constantly have like a balance of emptiness and fullness, or deconstruction and construction. It's like in every moment we're both taking off the genes of the previous moment and putting on the genes of the present moment, or in some sense even just allowing the atoms of the genes to reorganize in real time.
I like that. Cool. Thank you.
The jeans that I'm wearing is still an attempt to bring to conclusion this exploration started around how the brain represents phenomena. Really want us to bring it home. They crave it, need it. I love looking at your faces in deep thought. Yeah.
Dor, just to, I'm curious again. I mean, that's maybe related to one of the first questions that I asked before. Are we able to remove the filters? Are we able to maybe eliminate all these lenses, as you talked about right now, or
Yeah.
are we kind of simply, and you mentioned the filters are going to go all the way down, yes, all the way. Or maybe we try to create a particular lens, more sophisticated lens maybe, that is going to simplify the reality in which we see things, more
Yeah.
unified one.
Yes. That's exactly that. Doesn't mean that our life stops being challenging. It doesn't mean that we don't have friction with it. But the way that we relate to it becomes much more simple. Becomes much more smooth.
I think this does relate to the question you asked, where Eudor followed up with a like more mechanical, mathematic description of how the mind works. Because I think the question was how to get them into alignment. Like, is there a state of harmony that we need to create? And then you said, yeah, there's a state of harmony that we want to get them into, so they see the same thing. And right after that, you followed with a mathematical description.
Mm. Okay,
Maybe that's helpful.
let's try this. Let's try this. In some sense, with every layer of representation of reality, it's like we play a game of broken telephone. I'm not sure how it's called in English. Do you know that game where we sit in a circle and someone comes up with a word? It's like aubergines of winter, and they whisper it to the other person, and the other person needs to. Well, why you say aubergines of right? And by the time it completes the circle, you have ducks and flowers or something, right? It completely gets corrupt, or the friction in the low fidelity communications between each individual whispering to the ear, information gets lost. So the more layers of representation that we have, the more distant we are from reality, in a sense, the more friction there is. It's in the context of what I mentioned before, the way that we represent reality is not reality itself, so to speak. We have a statistical model that corresponds to all sorts of signals, right? Which then tell us dog, mom, house. And then we represent the distance between the prototypical example, house, and what I'm seeing now. And the distance requires energy. The less distance exists between what I'm seeing and the model of it that I have, the less I have to generate a lot of energy to represent the distance. Now, the way that our brain works is very much like, or like, let's say differently. The basic pattern of the brain is much more like the patterns we see in nature, the spirals that we see in broccoli, or the flow configurations of trees and rivers. And so when we see them, they map much more closely on the basic assumptions on the brain before we have any model, before we have any statistics. What the brain has been patterned on seeing, and even what it finds beautiful. And everything that isn't like that, all the rectangular and sharp corners of our houses and of existence require a lot of energy to maintain. It's like trying to square the circle. Like it's not a perfect spiral. It's like here's like kind of this, and this is more like every little thing needs a lot more descriptions around what the actual reality is. And again, the more we represent representations of representations in every layer, we have to have this distance from reality. So the less we feel obligated to represent, and part of where we're going is we less and less need to represent an agent that exists in the world, and more allow direct perception of reality to inform what it is that's happening, the less we have to go into those eternal, energy expensive and intensive representations of the agent who is me, who I'm now perceiving in this way, that's different from my model in this infuriating way that I'm upset with myself around, walking around in the world that also is not conforming to my representation because it has to be this way because my parents told me it would be this way. So there's a ball of tension of a lot of energy being represented that's always unsatisfying because it never fully matches the model, walking around in a world that's also infuriating because it never matches the expectations that we're still carrying from the time we were 2 years old. Now, the thing is, the way that our brain works in this regard is a feature, because when the systems that we create in reality are a representation of nature, of the laws of physics, I was calling them before. I don't want to go too deep into words in this. The less we have to carry, the less we have to work. So in a perfect world, and in some sense, this is the difference between what's called a sentient being. In the sutras, it's called sattva. And a fully awake being is that a fully awake being living in a world that's very harmonious or almost perfectly ordered in terms of the fundamental order of the universe, barely has to be aware because there's no conflict. The brain that it has, or whatever apparatus it has with which to represent and be aware of reality, matches reality so closely that it doesn't continually need to represent the conflict and the friction between itself and reality. And in some sense, the way that we are, the content of our minds, the way that our lives and cultures, societies are constructed, I'm looking outside the window at some houses in the distance, represent a result of what we created from a narrowing of a narrowing of a narrowing of a narrowing. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to represent all of this, versus if the originating function, creating our societies, our relationships, and so on, started with a more accurate reflection of reality, started with us being a more direct, harmonious reflection of all that is. And once we start seeing reality more and more acutely, more and more fidelously, the word I invented, we don't have to so much represent even how to do it. We become a natural outflow of this reflection in everything that we do, everything that we touch. The reason why when you see those very realized teachers and it feels like they're like a walking beacon of harmony, is exactly that. It's not a particular word that they're saying. It's not a thing that they do. It's just the way that their bodies are structured, the posture, the type of affluent positive energy that emerges out of them, the receptiveness, the open-heartedness, we like calling that. It's just the fundamental way that they're shaped is much more in alignment with what each and every one of us also know at the foundation of our being is home, is the configuration that we're going towards.
So this pattern is the Buddha nature that we referred before?
Yeah, Buddha nature is one way of relating to it. The words that are normally my go-to, and we'll speak about this more deeply in another chapter, are Mahamudra or Paravak. Mahamudra means Maha is great and Mudra is gesture. It's like the grand gesture of being, the continuously shifting universe and the shifting by this particular logic of this gesture. The Greek used to use the word logos, the logic of being, the logic of existence. They were referring to the same thing. Parvak, which comes from India, is like the great word, the great expression, the expression that surpasses all expressions. They're all pointing to the same thing. If we say Buddha nature it's more about pointing to the intrinsically awake nature of things, the effortlessly conscious aspect of all of existence before it becomes reified in our minds into anything, before any structure, before any activity. Once we connect to and are fed directly, perceived directly, then we also become more and more its expressions. In a sense, when we say enlightened, not awake, but enlightened, it is becoming a direct manifestation of this continuous flow. We connect with what sometimes can be called universal chi and become another rivulet of it, the grand river of this universe. Okay, so this turned out to be much more metaphysical than I had imagined this chapter discussion would be, and I want to make a short summary of everything that we talked about, just to wrap it all nicely. Jen, do you have a quick question before that?
I think so. I think it's quick. With the like, if once one is like, okay, this is just how reality is, and they're flowing with it, and things aren't really being constructed as much as like agents or beings, or like, or like that construction is very visible and seen through. Like, how does compassion, like, where does it come from? How does that come into play? Because I've heard like it's the same thing, but I think it's, I can understand the intimacy and like, oh, everything's beautiful, but the kind of compassion for the suffering, I think I'm curious about.
Yeah. So, Jen, do you have kids?
Mm-mm.
Do you have a sibling?
Yes.
Do you love them?
Sometimes. An older sibling, so.
Think of a person in your life, a family member or a close friend that you really love.
Okay.
And just imagine them being in pain. See what that elicits in you. Right? There's a direct experience. Like you see them lying at the side of the road, they were just hit by a car. God forbid. Yeah. What's the immediate response?
Panic. But the initial, when you just said suffering without the hit by the car imagery, then it was like some kind of like a little bit of sadness, but also like a warmth.
Mm-hmm. Think about even for yourself, never mind another person. If you get cut, you burn yourself on the oven. What's the immediate response?
After the panic, then honestly, I stay in panic for a bit, but then I think I'm sad after.
The immediate response that I imagine that all people have, as long as they have functioning nervous systems, if I'm touching an oven, just do this, right? Or I'm cut and I put it under the water.
Mm-mm.
That's compassion.
Okay.
And the thing that happens when you get more and more intimate, let's say, with Buddha nature and seeing that everything is that you become almost incapable, or I'll say, let me go all the way. You become incapable of not responding the same way. Now, that's not to say that you'll jump in front of a bullet meant for someone else, right? Because you still have self-preservation. In the same way that if if you know, if you're holding to your baby that's about to fall off the cliff, even if your hand is burning, you're still gonna keep it there, right? You're still gonna hold it. You still have choice. But the basic urge, when you see everything as a manifestation of God or Buddha nature, or whatever you want to call it, it makes you feel more connected to all things than even your best friend, even your children, even your parents. So you don't lose the ability to make distinctions. You still want to be attuned to your own health and the considerations of the moment, but it's immediately evoked by you because there's less of a broken telephone. It's like, okay, that's that person, that this is my relationship to them, and this is who I am, and this is my world, and this is my agenda, right? All those layers of, it's like, what can I do for this person right now, right?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's see. What's a summary of what we talked about? So we have spaces of awareness. This is how we know. What we know in every moment, every single moment, a new iteration, is the best solution that our minds have. Sometimes when I say mind, it is synonymous with awareness, for the conflict of existing, for the pressures of moment to moment needs and desires and everything that we see, everything that happens around us. This is our best solution right now, right? There's a way that we can even celebrate that. Which is why not just compassion, but also gratitude arises very naturally from Buddha nature. We just walk around with a sense of gratitude for every component of this existence, allowing us to exist as living beings here and now. This best solution, the more that we are stuck in the less developed paradigms of modeling reality, sometimes gets applied top down in a way that we then forget, which is what we've called genes. We put on a genes of an identity and of an agenda. I have to be successful. I have to look this and that way to my peers, right? And becomes not just genes, but like a whole straitjacket that we forget that we've put on, and we walk around life, and sometimes other people can see the straitjacket that we're in, and perhaps give us a loving and charitable reflection that helps us relax it a little bit. But generally, until we start meditating, until we start creating a more harmonious camera from all the tiny cameras pushing and pulling, it's very, very hard to see the straitjackets. And it's even harder to see the more fundamental pieces of reality, the Lego pieces composing a reality from which we can create a more refined modeling capacity, not even a model, modeling capacity. Every step that we go that allows us to find more refined Lego pieces allows us to then create a more sophisticated basis of operation, more sophisticated modeling capacity, which we then simply by holding, which requires a little effort every time we find a new one, simply by holding the basis of operation, all of the existing models become refined to align with the more sophisticated model. Every step of the way, we are reinventing ourselves, because what we think we are is also a model. And every basis of operation allows us to refine what we think we are, what we think the world is, until we even refine out of the way a lot of the need to continuously model ourselves. And we get to a point where we model ourselves, or we model the world just in time, ad hoc. Like, oh, now I want to show up as this. Now I want to show up as a clown. Now I want to show up as a scholar. Now I want to show up as a beggar. Now I want to show up as a Buddha. And the reason why this is difficult, the reason why we don't just jump into this configuration, right? The reason why we have a hard time doing all of this dissolving and tangling, allowing more sophisticated configurations to arise naturally, right? Through our brains and minds naturally do this, right? When we allow them the space, we don't have to learn how to do this. Happens naturally. Just as a baby initially can't see, or then only sees black and white, the eyes want to see the color, and our brains want to see Buddha nature. We just create the space for this to happen. The reason why it doesn't happen is solely that because society, because our parents, because the way that we've gone through life has left so many deposits in us, what we call karma or sometimes trauma, because the existing structures and the tunnels of reality are already so skewed, there's a lot of baggage, a lot of pain, a lot of things that we have to come to terms with about ourselves, our relationships, the worlds around us, with every step of this dissolution. And in some sense, that's the rate limiting step of this path. And a lot of the practice is trying to be more and more efficient in allowing us to metabolize all of those things that have been um, waiting in a giant backpack, giant baggage, waiting to come into the light of awareness, waiting to be integrated into the grander system. Once we do this, once we clear out all of this baggage, all of this karma, from the foundation of being aware of Buddha nature, of those finer pieces allowing us to construct ourselves in this model of reality, we become such a direct reflection and like an avatar of this universe, in a sense, in direct connection with all that is, that we have a sense of effortlessly flowing through life. There's minimal tension that needs to be had. Conflict is reduced, or internal conflict, in a sense, is reduced to a maximum. And that's the configuration that we called enlightenment, or an enlightened mind. It's one that is directly fed by Buddha nature, by the energy of the entire universe, and is a reflection, a very accurate reflection of the entire universe moment to moment. And this is where we're all going. And I recommend, now that you have an intellectual sense of it, even if it's not perfect, and of course it's never perfect, only the thing itself is perfect, I recommend that every time you sit and begin a meditation, you cultivate the intention, you state the intention. I am doing this to cultivate an enlightened mind. I want to be an accurate reflection of this universe for the sake of myself and for the sake of all beings, who I, at least for now, consciously or conceptually know are not that distinct from me as I imagine. So we have a little less time than I would have liked. I do want us to do an exercise in pairs. It's going to be a bit of an intimate exercise or a vulnerable exercise, let's say. It doesn't have to be intimate, but it's one that I really want to leave you with. Let's just cut some time from the end where we talk about the next chapter, because we already mentioned it a little bit, and take 10 minutes. Maybe we have like 8 minutes for this. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Do we still have energy? This is gonna be fun. Awesome. So there's two spiciness level for this experience, and again, we're gonna do this. This is not gonna be recorded. You don't have to report back. This is just you and one other of our Sangha members, and maybe one of you is with me. How many do we have? We have like 11 people. Yeah, someone on camera. Anyway, we'll see who wants to participate. We're gonna show up with the person. We're gonna tell them what jeans we're wearing. And then not only are we going to bring it to awareness, we're going to dance with the jeans. We're going to ham it up all the way. And we're going to do this with the deepest or like the most essential jeans that we're wearing. And the paradigm that this comes from, I'll mention briefly, is from my teacher or guide or crazy old man, dark bodhisattva Cray, who has this paradigm called Kud, which is know, own, out, and dance. we know we're wearing jeans, right? I really want you to see how beautiful I am. We out it, which is what I just said. We own it. It's like, this is what is happening in me. This is a choice that I've made, even if unconsciously. And then we dance with it. We dance with the jeans. Sometimes we have some shame or embarrassment about having a particular jeans. I want to be seen as beautiful, right? But dancing with it, fully outing it this way and dancing with it takes away a lot of the shame, takes away a lot of the, oh, I don't want to be seen as that, which is what perpetuates us wearing the jeans all the time. And as we learn this practice, we also learn how to do it with jeans that we've never worn before and then get practice in them and so on. Okay, I don't want to make many more words. Armog, can you help us go into break rooms with 2 people in each and come back 2 minutes before we end and make it so people get a notice halfway through?
Well, let's try and see. Could you make me an admin?
Okay, let's make it happen. Again, you're going to speak about your genes, fully own and out it, the deepest ones, the most embarrassing, the most vulnerable ones that you feel safe and that you feel happy outing with your person, and then dancing them. What does it mean to you? How would a person wearing those jeans move in the situation right now in the world? And have fun with it, like ham it up. We are at time now. I want to honor that. And so I'm going to give 2 sentences of what it is that we're going to talk about next week. And then if anyone wants to stay and share some of your experience, I would really love to stay here with you and hear. So next time, we're going to talk about why we sit, which really goes into this whole Buddha nature thing and makes the case for how, in many ways, meditation is not an act of creating something new, but connecting to what already is. We're going to explore that more deeply. And then the next one, the one after that, one of my favorite chapters, Solving the Infinite Puzzle, really discusses how this capacity to connect with a deeper reality and have the finer Lego pieces helps us not just with some lofty spiritual ideals, but to take care of our basic needs, to be a better human. It's so simple. I wish we talked about this more. Meditation makes for a nicer life. All right. So anyone wants to stay, I welcome it. We'd love to speak a little more about your experience. Other than that, thank you all for coming, and I'll see you next week. Okay, who wants to stay and chat about your experience? Yeah, go for it.
Just raising my hand because I wanted to stay, but that's what you said. But I will share. It was nice. It's a very, very cool exercise. Very intense though. The feeling. Wasn't easy to dance. I think that was the hardest part. Because once you feel it, you kind of say it. And then of course, yes, you own it as part of that process, but I feel like the dancing is way more intentional and active. And it feels so serious. And then doing this doing this dance takes the seriousness away and also the constriction, but it feels almost like you're making fun of a very serious topic, you know, like something terrible has happened and you're laughing about it. But then it also felt releasing. Yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Actually, I have found myself in 2 types of jeans. One was quite clear to me. I could describe the constriction and my feelings about it. But another one was very somehow deeper and less, maybe what was more intense, but I couldn't really describe it. So it was interesting to see different kinds of constrictions. Some are more on the upper levels of consciousness and other very deep that I just know that there's something there. I can call it a name, but that's it.
Good. You found something so deep, it's hard to even give it a name.
No, the name was okay, but then to describe it more or to see why or how, or it's just something that I almost had those genes on from childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'll say every move in the 4 moves, know, own, out, dance, is more difficult than the last. Right? Knowing is the simplest. It's just like, oh, I think I'm wearing the jeans. Owning it means like, oh, I made this choice. I know this. This is what I am. I did this. And to out it in some sense is owning it in the world to someone else, which is much more difficult, right? Because then it can threaten our identity. What will they think of us? So much of the genes are dependent on them being stealth, right? We don't want people to know we are cunning manipulators. We don't want people to know we're making a ton of effort to look like we just woke up this way. And then, of course, dancing with it is all of it at the same time. That's absolutely the hardest, but of course, that's also the most fruitful. And I'm glad you said, is it Linus or Linus?
It's in German, it's Linus, but just say Linus, it's easier.
No, for me, Linus saying it's much easier. Yes. I'm glad you were having fun with it and like taking it not seriously. It's always a good thing to do, especially with something that can be very difficult. If we have identities that feel much more like not supposed to be this, but then ultimately, and that the hardest thing is to dance with something with full seriousness. And that's not to say like grim seriousness, but like to fully take on the role, like an actor in a movie. Right? An actor in the movie doesn't like do the lines and it's like he go like no, he's the thing, he's the character. And as long as you do that in awareness, the as long as you do that in awareness, you get the benefit. Really finding all the spaces in the genes, seeing where they match, where they don't fit, where you want to change them, where you might want to make a new stitch. Increases our range of motion. The same teacher I mentioned, Cray, he talks about a box of self, which is sort of similar to the straitjacket or the jeans box of self. The more we go towards the edges of the box, the more we're like, not supposed to be here. I'm gonna die. If I say this, that's gonna be the end of right. And so we expand, we make a bigger and bigger and bigger box until no corner of the box is a threat anymore. We don't have any idea of I have to be this way. And that's freedom. I can dance any dance. Yeah.
Sorry, the dancing part is the kind of fully wear the jeans and be that way in the moment. That's what that is.
Yeah, and like what is the quintessential way that this identity, that this character, that these genes make me in the world? What sort of dance am I dancing when I'm wearing jeans versus a tutu?
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm putting on a wig and a dress, well, I don't need a wig, but you know, if we're putting on a dress and going to dance, right? It's like, oh, I'm probably going to be seen as more feminine. How would a feminine dance? How would she move? How would she respond to people? Would she be more soft or more rigid? Should be more submissive or more right? Versus if I'm wearing a suit and a tie and I'm going to be dancing, it's like, oh wait, I'm a businessman. Maybe I'm not supposed to flail around, right? I have to be seen in this role.
Okay, that makes sense. So you can see how it affects things and kind of start to see through it.
Yeah. Right. And you want to be able to switch from businessman to tutu wearing cute little girl in the blink of an eye. All right. shall we end? Sounds like I think it's a good time. Thank you all for joining me. This is really fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
To see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.